Back then, David and Billy were my equivalent to my kidney stone. And for that, I want to thank them. We also had a guy by the name of Glenn Pritzloff in our wrestling room, who most of you know or know of. Glenn is one, if not the best wrestler of the Shore Conference of all time. He was a multiple Division I All-American and a national champion at Penn State. Glenn gave fits to anyone that stepped on the mat with him. The term fit is an understatement. Just imagine grinding it out with him day in and day out at practice. Then there was Kevin Wilson, who was also here, who had a motor that wouldn't quit. Kevin's motor went on to help him become a New Jersey State runner-up after I had graduated. So Kevin, thank you for pushing me and helping me get into shape. Doesn't stop there. My dad, who was just up here, was a multiple Pennsylvania high school state champ and an NAIA college national runner-up. We would have matches with each other in just about every room in our house during my high school years. I've got the scars to prove it. He would also occasionally show up at practice. So between him and Coach Erbig, who my dad referenced earlier, they would wrestle with us at practice. Coach Erbig every day. And that old man strength wasn't even easy to deal with as a 16, 17, and 18-year-old kid. So thank you to Coach Erbig and thank you to my dad. My friend and one of the current Middletown High School coaches, Eric Cook, who consistently beats up on his wrestlers to this day at the age of 52, was also a wrestling partner. So thank you, Eric, for being a friend and a wrestling partner. I also want to thank the entire Middletown South current coaching staff for being here. Matt, Robin, Brian, appreciate your support. The last person I want to thank is someone who couldn't make it today. That's my mom. For anyone that knew her, you'd remember that she'd never miss a match. Her and my dad spent countless hours of drive time sitting in their butts in the bleachers and drive time to and from tournaments, whether they were high school tournaments or open tournaments. They were and still are a great support system for me. During open tournaments in the off season, my mom would be right there on the mat, the corner of the mat, cheering for me, trying to coach, saying a lot more than my dad would say during the matches. Unfortunately, she's at home right now, being watched by my sister suffering from dementia. If it wasn't for the ones I've mentioned above and others, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. I'm not sure I would have gotten any better if not for all of the above mentioned wrestling partners. I've also gotten better by growing into the man that I am today due to the support system and the path my parents paved for me. So I thank you all for being here today, and I want to thank each and every one of you in different ways. Throughout my wrestling career, one of my positive attributes was my wrestling IQ. If I was in a tough match and I was up by 3, riding my opponent with little time left, I knew I could give up a reversal, hang onto a leg, and let time run out. It's not necessarily the greatest way to finish, but I knew what it took to wrestle against good opponents. I always knew how much time was left in the match and where the out-of-bounds line was at all times. My biggest attribute then and now was my mental toughness. Even though I got my butt kicked in practice every day, I still thought I could beat anyone once I stepped out on the mat. After all, I didn't take those butt whippings in practice for nothing. I knew I was good even if my opponent had a slight physical edge, because I knew I had the mental edge, the wrestling IQ, and the determination that would ultimately win me the match. One of my first dual meets I've ever wrestled in a Middletown South singlet was against Brick Memorial, the powerhouse of the Shore Conference at the time. It was my sophomore year, and I was slated to wrestle Vinny Santinello Sr. I did not know Vinny, but my teammates were telling me how good he was. My dad also did some of his own scouting and told me the same. However, I did hear that Vinny had a loss in some world or national tournament. I kept telling my teammates, he's not unbeatable, he's got a loss. Most of them laughed at me, but I wanted the challenge and a benchmark to see where I stood against the best in New Jersey. And I truly did think I could beat him. Well, that match, Vinny bumped up a weight, so he, of course, ducked me just like Kerry Koloff. Just joking. I wound up wrestling a guy by the name of Eric Paul, who was also a successful wrestling, short conference wrestler. I did have the opportunity to wrestle Vinny, as my father said, in that Region 6 semifinal match. Didn't go well. He took first, I took third, I did qualify for states. But my point here is, even though Vinny beat me, my teammates were probably correct to laugh at me, but my point is that I had a tough mental attitude, and it was important to have that tough mental attitude in wrestling and in life. How could you possibly mentally defeat yourself before you go out on the mat? So you've got to think you can win, and that's the attitude that I had. So wrestling in general provided me a lot of things that I have carried out in my adult life. To name a few, I wake up in the morning with back pains, with neck pains, with shoulder aches, with spasms, cauliflower ear, just to name a few. But I guess I should thank wrestling, the sport of wrestling, for all the aches and pains I have. But on a serious note, wrestling has provided me structure, determination, and pushed me to my limits. And I'm fortunate enough to have carried these attributes to the man I am today. And I do have to thank the sport of wrestling for that. In closing, whenever and wherever your wrestling career ends, remember to springboard those positive wrestling attributes into your personal and professional life beyond wrestling. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Congratulations to everyone.
All right.